All right, so let's jump right into it today. We are tackling this complex issue that's been all over the news lately, birthright citizenship in the U.S. We've got a ton of articles about President Trump's executive order, the legal challenges that have popped up, and what it all means for the future expert speaker. Definitely a hot topic and fascinating how these legal battles are playing out. Host speaker.
Yeah, and even more so because a third federal judge just blocked the order. 3 judges now. So, what does this all mean, really?
Well, to understand this, we need to look at the order itself. It's designed to end birthright citizenship.
As it stands now, right?
Right now, anyone born on U.S. soil automatically becomes a citizen. It doesn't matter what their parents' immigration status is, and it all comes down to the 14th Amendment.
Okay, so that's the law of the land. So why change it? What's the reasoning behind all of this?
So the executive order wants to deny citizenship to babies born to mothers who are in the U.S. illegally or on those temporary visas. And there's another condition: their fathers can't be citizens or legal residents either. And it's specifically for those born on or after February 19th, 2025. So it's not like a total immediate change, but it still seems like a pretty major move.
Hmm.
What are the legal arguments against this? I mean, judges are calling it straightforwardly illegal.
Well, the main argument is that it goes against the 14th Amendment.
Right.
I mean, think about it for a sec. The 14th Amendment was put in place back in 1868, right after the Civil War. The goal was to guarantee citizenship for the newly freed slaves. The citizenship clause is pretty clear. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. And this interpretation has already been upheld by the Supreme Court, too.
So there's a historical and legal precedent for this. Okay, so what would happen if this order actually went through? What are the real-world consequences here?
You could have a whole generation of kids born here, but without any of the rights of being a citizen. Education would be a problem. Getting into college, financial aid, all of that stuff can become huge obstacles. Healthcare, too. Without citizenship, the system becomes a nightmare, especially for families already struggling.
Yeah, that's way more than legal stuff. What about immigration policy in general? How would this fit into that?
It could lead to serious societal divisions. It feeds into fears about who's really American and who belongs. This isn't happening in isolation either. There's a global trend of rising nationalism and resistance to globalization.
So it's not just the U.S. dealing with this. How is another country handling this?
Let's take Canada, for example. They have birthright citizenship, too. But they've been worried about birth tourism. Their approach is more about dealing with that specific problem, not getting rid of birthright citizenship altogether. They've put in stricter rules and more monitoring to prevent people from taking advantage of the system. More targeted compared to what's being suggested here.
So Canada is finding a middle ground. Okay, back to the main issue here in the U.S. The 14th Amendment seems pretty straightforward. How's it been interpreted over time, especially when it comes to undocumented immigrants' kids?
That's where things get interesting. There's a debate among legal scholars about the original intent of the 14th Amendment. Some believe it was never meant to apply to children of undocumented immigrants. Others say the language is broad enough to include them. But the Supreme Court has always supported a broader view, meaning it applies to all children born on U.S. soil, regardless of their parents' status.
So we have this long history, legal precedent, and now an executive order that seems to go against it. It sounds like a huge legal battle is brewing, one with major consequences.
Absolutely. This challenges the existing legal interpretations. And it raises questions about how far executive power can go and the role of the courts in limiting that power. The stakes are huge.
This is a lot to take in. So what's next? What could happen with all this legal back and forth?
There are a couple of ways this could go. The courts could just keep blocking the executive order, upholding the current interpretation of the 14th Amendment, or it could go all the way up to the Supreme Court. They could back up the lower courts. Or they could overturn everything and completely change how we see birthright citizenship. Then there's the whole political solution thing. But with how things are right now, that seems unlikely.
Yeah, a lot up in the air and a lot at stake. You mentioned earlier that other countries are wrestling with this too. What are some ways they're approaching birthright citizenship?
Let's look at Ireland. For example, back in 2004, they had this referendum to tighten up birthright citizenship.
Why was that?
They were worried about birth tourism. Basically, pregnant women were going to Ireland just to have their babies. So their kids would automatically become Irish citizens. The referendum passed, so now at least one parent has to have the legal right to live in Ireland for their child to get citizenship automatically.
Interesting. So they made it tougher. What about other countries? Have any gone even further?
Australia and New Zealand did something pretty big. They got rid of unconditional birthright citizenship completely back in the 80s. Now, if a baby is born there, they only become a citizen right away if one of their parents is already a citizen or a permanent resident.
Wow, big changes. Why did they do that?
Concerns about immigration and controlling who gets citizenship rights and benefits.
Okay, that makes sense. Any other interesting examples?
France is a good one. They've always had just SAL, that's the fancy term for birthright citizenship, but they've added some limits over the years. Kids born to parents who are there illegally can only apply for citizenship when they turn 18.
Yeah.
And even then, there are rules. Like they have to have lived in France for a while without leaving and show that they're part of French society.
Sounds like a lot of countries are trying different things, even those that have always had birthright citizenship. What are some of the arguments for and against restricting it in all these debates?
It's complicated for sure. The arguments often reflect anxieties about politics and society. Those who want to restrict birthright citizenship are often worried about national security, the strain on social services, and what they see as unfairness in giving automatic citizenship to kids born to people here illegally. They think you should have to earn citizenship, not just get it because you were born here.
I see. What about the arguments for keeping birthright citizenship?
People who want to keep it talk about how it's good for social unity. They say that denying citizenship to kids born in a country can create a permanent underclass, which leads to people being pushed to the margins and excluded. They also point out that birthright citizenship is a basic principle in many democracies, and restricting it could weaken values of equality and inclusion.
Sounds like strong feelings on both sides. And it goes beyond the legal stuff. It's about who we are, where we belong, and what it means to be a citizen in the world today. How would you sum up the main conflict here?
I think the main conflict is between this deeply ingrained idea of birthright citizenship in American law and the political and social fears that are driving efforts to restrict it. And the result of this legal fight and the wider debate will have a big impact. It will shape immigration policy, for sure, but also the very idea of what it means to be American and who belongs here.
It's a lot to think about, and it's important to have these discussions with an open mind and be ready to listen to different points of view. It's not just an abstract legal thing, it's about real people, families, and the future of our country. Why should our listeners care about this? How does it affect them, even if the executive order doesn't directly impact them?
This goes to the heart of what it means to be American and what we stand for as a nation. It's about who we are, our sense of belonging, and how we treat people who are different from us. The outcome of this whole thing will really determine what kind of society we want to live in and the legacy we pass on.
It really brings it home that these aren't just legal ideas. They impact people, families, and whole communities across the country.
Absolutely. We need to talk about these things with an open mind, be willing to listen to each other, and recognize all the complexities involved.
We've covered a lot of ground today. The legal battles over President Trump's executive order, the global debate on birthright citizenship, the potential consequences of changing things. So what's the one big takeaway you hope our listeners get from this?
This whole situation forces us to ask a really important question.
Yeah, what's that?
In a world that's so interconnected, how do we define what it means to be a citizen and where we belong? There's no simple answer, but it's something we need to think about carefully as we try to understand immigration in the 21st century.
It's something we all need to think about, both personally and as a society. This conversation is only going to become more important as the world keeps changing. So to our listeners, we encourage you to keep learning about this. Stay informed and have thoughtful discussions. The future of our country depends on it.